I appreciate you being online with me. I'm David Hayes. I'm a professor with ABS in entrepreneurship. I want to go over a few things with you in the sense of using Zoom, and then we'll start the session. I do see that we have one notice out of a person within chat. A good afternoon message to everybody. But one of the new features that we have within Zoom that I want to point out to you instead of chat is the Q&A feature. So you should see on your Zoom session that you have a Q&A feature. You can ask your questions within the Q&A feature on Zoom, and then we'll be addressing those as we go through the session. So I'd like to take any questions that you would have in real time as we go along. So feel free to ask your questions in Q&A or to chat with us. We'll be monitoring both of those for you. So good afternoon. Again, I'm David Hayes. I'm going to be with you for the next 30 minutes, talking to you about an entrepreneurial mindset. This is part of an ongoing series that we have called the ABS Learning Series. And we're very happy to present to you some information that we hope that you can use in your personal life, and then as well as within your professional life. We last week talked about the evolution of entrepreneurship. This week we're going to speak about, well, what is an entrepreneurial mindset? If you notice, next week we'll talk about what are some of the components or what drives an entrepreneurial mindset. We'll then have a session that talks about, well, what can you do to develop a mindset that is entrepreneurial. Finally, we'll end up with a session that we call Entrepreneurship in Action. In Entrepreneurship in Action, we have a panel discussion lined up for you of an entrepreneur, a social entrepreneur, and then finally a corporate entrepreneur, and the different perspectives that each of those individuals will bring to you about the use of entrepreneurship and what does an entrepreneurial mindset mean to them, and in the work that they do every day. So session 2, which is this one, deals with the mindset. And I made a case for you in the first presentation, and I want to recap that for you. I made a case of how entrepreneurship is evolving and then how it applies to all. Then I made a case that there are abilities that we all need to have that will help us be successful in the future. And those are a number of different entrepreneurial abilities. But to recap that case for you, I talked about how entrepreneurship is changing, that we know that globally that entrepreneurship is the driving force for job creation, for innovation, that entrepreneurial ventures, or that's new businesses, are the economic engines of growth. I also said to you that, well, wait a minute, it's more than new venture creation, that it also it applies to large organizations. So companies that are entrepreneurial, and that's defined as companies that are creative, innovative, ones that take risks. Those companies outperform other organizations in growth, productivity, and then also in profitability. So what we see now is an expansion of entrepreneurship or entrepreneurial to not just new venture creation, but also to large corporations. And we add to that so large companies have entrepreneurial needs. We know that new venture creation is a driving economic force. We looked at statistics last week that said, well, what are some of the workforce trends for freelancing, for contract labor? What are the trends that say that 7 out of 10, for example, of people that study at university don't end up in that field of study? So whatever they got their degree in, they don't end up doing that as part of their career. So the case was this, because of all of these things and future trends, that the development of entrepreneurial abilities or capabilities is of increasing importance to us all. That led us to say, yes, it is new venture creation, that is entrepreneurship, but the case now is that all of us should be developing what we call an entrepreneurial mindset, and that this mindset can propel us to greater levels of success, and that is important for all of us. So I said, think of entrepreneurship as being entrepreneurial. So if we can think of ourselves as becoming entrepreneurial, whether we work for a large company, we do our own startup, new venture creation, or we're a freelancer or contract labor, what are the things that will allow us to be most successful as we move forward in our careers? And to me, that's session 2 now, is the entrepreneurial mindset. So I want to talk to you about what are the components of an entrepreneurial mindset, how that can help anybody. And if you see, here's a good quote here: the successful future will exploit an entrepreneurial mindset. That's the ability to deal with innovation, to deal with uncertain conditions, to deal with rapidly changing environment and rapidly changing conditions. Most like what we see now. We see a number of uncertain times and uncertain conditions. So if we have an entrepreneurial mindset and we know what the components are, and we know what skills are aligned with those components, and we're able to develop those skills, it's my belief that we'll all be better off as we move forward. So the mindset, which is interesting when you look at entrepreneurship and you look at research within entrepreneurship, while the mindset and the development of a mindset, and I also call it capacity, it may be the single most important aspect to success. It's often overlooked and really not understood. So if you look at magazine articles, what makes up and comprises an entrepreneur, you're going to see people talking about many different variables. And if you track these in research, which we do, there are over 300 variables people have said apply to a mindset. In reality, that not all of them really do. But we want to present to you a framework for the mindset. And then in next week's session, we're going to talk about some of the specific abilities and skills that are part of that mindset. So that framework in terms of the entrepreneurial mindset, it's one that we want to give you an experience. And if you have entrepreneurial thinking, we believe that you can take that process of how you think, how you assess opportunities, and you can apply it to whatever your situation is. So a new company startup, working for a not-for-profit, working for a social venture, working within academia, working for a large corporation, that the mindset is important to all of these types of activities. So what is a mindset? A mindset is this. If you think about it, where do we form our beliefs, our attitudes, our opinions, the assumptions that we make? Well, a mindset is that. It's both the conscious, the things that we know about, and then the unconscious, the things that we haven't really considered that are impacting our mindset and impacting our attitudes, our beliefs, and our assumptions. These influence ultimately our behavior. So they influence our behavior. And a lot of the research that I'm sharing with you now comes from research done by a group called the ELI, the Entrepreneurial Learning Initiative. And they have a program called the Ice House program. And they ask participants to reflect upon what has made them successful. They interviewed over 500 entrepreneurial people, and they came to some conclusions that mindset is a powerful part of our life that allows us to move forward or not move forward, to hold us back. So that mindset, really, if you think about this, these are beliefs and assumptions that influence our decisions and behavior. A lot of these are very deep-seated. A lot of these mean that they're formed over time. They're things that we don't even consciously think about, but they do impact how we feel about ourselves, the capabilities that we believe that we have, and that desire that as we move forward, what are some of those desires as we move forward? In other words, how could we best move forward without impeding the things that we are capable of doing? Often, if you notice here, we're not aware of it. We're not aware of our mindset and how it impacts us, both positively or negatively, that we're not aware of what that mindset really is. So what can we talk about? I say this: that a mindset, if we properly can help you reframe your thoughts, your processes, what you're good at, what your assumptions are, that we have the ability of opening up larger and better opportunity discovery processes for you. And that what I'm speaking about doesn't require special talents. It doesn't require access to a lot of funding, or if I even said here, venture capital. It doesn't require the development of any breakthrough technology. It really is thinking about what are our interests, our abilities, and then our passions, and how can we align those with needs of others? And how can we position ourselves to be somebody who is a champion of what we call an opportunity discovery process? And by the way, if you have questions as we're going through these materials, feel free to ask those questions again in the Q&A section. I'm reviewing those as we're going along. If you can't find the Q&A area, then certainly put those in the chat feature. And then I'll be addressing those as we go along through the session for you. All right, so the mindset, sort of summarizing what is a mindset. Now we're going to get into what the components of what a mindset are, though. An entrepreneurial mindset allows you to do observation or opportunity discovery. A mindset that is entrepreneurial is one that is creative, it's one that's adaptive, it is one that is able to work within a team environment, it's one that values communication and teamwork. It also is one that combines our passion, our perseverance, our determination, and it is one that is self-directed, that relies on us to always question our assumptions, our conclusions, and to validate those as we move forward. So it's an opportunity discovery process, okay? It really reveals, it wraps into an opportunity discovery process, and it's one that's good for all of us. It's one that we can develop, and we can enhance this through learning, through observations, through training, through practice in the field. And again, we're trying to develop a mindset that gives us entrepreneurial capabilities because of the importance of entrepreneurial capabilities to our future careers, to our employer. So if we work, for example, at OCP, the ability of having employees that have an entrepreneurial mindset that can become future leaders, can lead innovation, and can lead change for the organization is a tremendous asset. So I think that a mindset can empower us, we as ordinary people, to do extraordinary things. And if that's the case, then we ask ourselves, well, what are the components of this mindset? And there's some 4 simple ones for you. They deal with, where do our influences come from? And can we challenge those influences? Do we have an internal or an external locus of control? In other words, do we react to situations or do we respond? And ultimately, do we feel that we have a power to choose how we wish to move forward within our careers? Let's explore those 4 components for just a few minutes. Here is, I couldn't find what I thought would be a better slide for you, so I used this iceberg. And here is an iceberg, and it talks about what's above the water and what's below the water. And what's below the water is typically much more mass, about 90% of the mass of the iceberg, right? And what we see is just on the top, that 10%. So if you compare this to our influences and where does our knowledge come from and our beliefs about ourselves, well, the tip of the iceberg, that visible part, is only 10% of really where our thoughts and knowledge come from. It's that stuff under the water, the implicit knowledge, the underlying beliefs and assumptions that drive how we feel, how we respond, and then how do we move forward with taking action. So if you think about it and we ask about, well, our knowledge and our actions, what are they driven by? One of the first things that they're driven by is influence. And influence for us, influence of others, we're making a lot of important decisions and choices for ourselves. about our families, about our job, about our career, about the company that we work for. And we're doing that, making those important choices with limited information. Usually we're doing those with assumptions that we've made that are unchallenged. So I may say, well, I'm not very good at math. Well, is that really true? Is that an assumption that I've made over time? Is it something that I could learn to become good at? And we're looking at unchallenged assumptions, and we're looking at beliefs that may be outdated. So if we're making important choices with limited information, with unchallenged assumptions, and then with outdated beliefs, is there something we can do to recognize this is the pattern of the way that we make decisions and change that? So where do most of our influences come from? You probably know this, that from our environment. So here we are in an environment and where we live, the community that surrounds us, the friends and family that we have, the network of influencers that we have. Environment is a very powerful influencer of telling us what we can do and what we can't do. So there is a collective mindset, correct? If we think about it, we generally have opinions that are collective, and these influence our choices. They usually create a need to conform, and they put us in a position with a mindset that we become tethered to a particular way or thought or process, or thinking that something has to be done this way and there's no other way to do it. And these mindsets in the environment are a big influencer on us. They could be negative influencers. They could be telling us that, no, those are things that we're not good at doing when maybe we could be. They could be positive influencers. They could be encouragement. They could be moving us forward, driving us in a positive direction. But influence from the environment becomes a powerful impactor on our beliefs and what we think, the assumptions that we've made, and how we move forward. So the belief in our own powerlessness or lack of worth. So this is from Peter Senge. Holds us back from realizing what our vision could be and what may lock us into an all familiar pattern of behavior. So what we're saying with an entrepreneurial mindset is that we should be challenging what this behavior is, and we should be challenging the assumptions that we make to either affirm the beliefs that we have or to discard them and adopt a new set of beliefs about what we're capable of doing and what our future may hold for us. So we really say that if you think about influences, the other thing to think about combined with influences from our external environment is, do we react to situations or do we respond? Think about driving. So if I'm driving and somebody pulls abruptly in front of me, my initial reaction to that, well, is going to be the react. It's going to be the slam on the brakes, probably to get mad. Maybe I honk the horn at that person. And I've had a reaction which, one, slamming on my brakes has saved me from hitting the car in front of me. But two, me getting very angry at that person, honking the horn at the person. That's a reaction. But if you think about it, it happens automatically, right? So it happens automatically to us. It lacks a conscious intention. It's experienced as an immediate impulse. It's an unconscious choice. And it can be, if you apply it to how we act in our academic studies, how we act in our business or in the job that we have, you can have a learned pattern of behavior that could be experienced as automatic. So I am an entrepreneur turned mentor turned university professor and teaching courses this semester. Here's a great example. I had a student that was from Pakistan. She was very quiet, sat in the back room, very, very good and very highly qualified student. And I asked her a few weeks into the course, I asked her about her, does she speak much in classes and could I call on her and would that be okay? The answer is, well, yes, of course, but I thought that's not acceptable here in the US. Well, why did you think that? Because I looked around me and I noticed that students have this pattern of not really responding to questions that are being asked. So I just thought that was the way that everything was. So if you think about this, this is an assumption that she made upon external influences, the environment around her. She then subsequently in that class became very vocal, and I would call on her quite a bit, and that drew in other students to start participating more. So we can have this normal reaction, which is unconscious. We can have patterns that we have thought were valid, that if we explore those patterns or those assumptions, we can realize, wait a minute, maybe we have an opportunity not to react, but maybe we have an opportunity instead to respond. Now, reacting is what we call external locus of control. That means we believe that the majority of our lives, the things that we do and the decisions that we make, are determined not by us, but they're determined by somebody else, that we have no power over the situation, that we end up focusing, though, on things we can't control, and we react. We can't control the person that drives and cuts in front of us in the car. We can't control those things, but we can control, and we react, we can control how we maybe respond. So think of external locus of control versus a response. With the response, we're making a conscious choice. It involves deliberate thought. It involves us to assess a situation and then to respond to that situation where we can take some control of the situation. So we have the ability to respond to a situation, which we call an internal locus of control. So here we're responsible for our own outcomes, for our own beliefs, our behaviors, and our actions. So when we look at internal and external locus of control, what we're saying is we have a choice. And we have a power to choose that, are we externally driven or are we internally driven? And if we're internally driven, we can take control and we can respond to situations versus react to them. So somebody who has, and by the way, the research shows that people with entrepreneurial abilities generally have an internal locus of control, that they feel that they're in charge of their situation, that they feel a need to think about external influences and figure out a way to positively respond to those external influences versus react. Those individuals challenge their beliefs and assumptions to see if they're true or not. They feel confident, so they have a higher level of confidence, they have a higher level of persistence, and they're knowing how they're executing on how they respond. So you have external, where we feel powerless, internal, where people are taking charge and taking control. So where are we? We've talked about the environment and beliefs and how our environment and our beliefs can affect the choices we make. We've talked about external influences and how those can be powerful, and they can be powerful, positive influences of ours. We can have parents that are supportive. We can have coworkers that are supportive of us. And we can have powerful negative influencers. Oh no, you'll never be good at that. Oh no, that idea is not a very good one. Why would you ever bother doing that? So I started a large multi-million-dollar company for technology. When I took that to one of my family members, I asked for his advice. He said to me, David, I don't know that you're bright enough to pull that off. And two, I don't think the idea is a very good one. So that made me very upset. I didn't react at the time. What I decided to do was prove him wrong. And 10 years later, I had started and grown a very successful multi-million-dollar US software company. So we have this react versus respond, where we can let the environment negatively impact us, or we can positively respond, where we can make a conscious choice and we can be internally driven. So an entrepreneurial mindset is based upon the belief that, yes, there are outside influencers, but the way we respond to those influencers is the way that we're able to best move forward with an internal locus of control. We make a conscious choice to move in a certain pattern, or to move forward with certain decisions. So far we have that. Now think about this. I picked this because we're looking out into the future, right? We're looking out into a horizon. We don't know what is out there in that horizon. But we're going to set a vision for ourselves. Where do we want to be? What job do we want to have? What career do we want to have? What are we passionate about? What are we going to align ourselves with? And we're going to decide to take this entrepreneurial mindset and apply it to get to where we wish to be. So that vision means we're going to harness abilities. We're going to focus on goals of which we have control over. We're going to think about the destination of where we wish to be. And very importantly, we're going to arrange our priorities to match where we want to be. We're going to respond. We're going to think about the destination and the vision. We're going to set together a plan to get us there, our goals, and then arrange what are the priorities for us that will drive us there and that will get us there. That means this. An entrepreneurial mindset helps us to assess who we are, the beliefs and attitudes that we have about ourselves and our capabilities. It allows us to make choices versus respond, to take action on those choices and to drive outcomes. So to drive outcomes, it really does this for us. We are involved in jobs, we're involved in careers or companies where we're in uncertain conditions. They're ambiguous. We don't really know what the conditions are. We all know that we have limited resources, but we're able to self-direct our process for observation and inquiry. And you see the list of things here that drive us to become more entrepreneurial and that allow us to develop an entrepreneurial mindset. So these are important pieces. And by the way, the things on the left, observation, problem solving, etc., I'm going to speak about those specifically next week. So I'll speak about those specifically next week. And how do we develop these particular skills or abilities that will help drive us forward with an entrepreneurial mindset? So to me, the entrepreneurial mindset or entrepreneurship, it's more than starting a new company. Yes, it does involve starting a new company for sure, but it's more than that, and it applies to all, whether you're in a corporation or you're freelancing, you're contracting. We've got the power to choose. We have the ability of thinking about what influences us, and then we can plan for our success and focus on it, ultimately to have some type of opportunity that can be transformative. That means that can change us personally, and that can impact positively others as well. So I put a model together, and that model said this, and next week we'll talk about skills and self-efficacy and personality traits. But if we develop an entrepreneurial mindset, that mindset can drive us to the type of opportunity we wish to solve, and it can apply really to anything that we're working on. It can be within a corporation, it can be a new venture, it could be freelancing or contracting. If we can develop the skills and the confidence or the self-efficacy to develop this mindset, we can then align our particular needs, the personality trait side, with what best opportunity that we have in the future. I end it with this. I say this. You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes, you can steer yourself in any direction you choose. I guess as I grew up with Dr. Seuss books, and those Dr. Seuss books, I pulled this quote out, and it really says, challenge ourselves, challenge your beliefs, challenge your thoughts. Let's figure out how to get you to reassess who you are, what direction you wish to move forward in. Let's then give you the skills, which we'll talk about next week, have you think about your personality, and have you think about how you can move forward to develop an entrepreneurial mindset. That's what I have for you for today's session. What I'd like to know is, what do you think? What questions do you have? What comments do you have about any of the materials? We have the Q&A box open for you. So if you have any questions or you have any comments you'd like to leave, please go ahead and type those in the Q&A box. If you're having difficulty with that, go and use the chat function. So we do have the chat function available for you as well. We have both of those available that we're monitoring. So if you have any questions, we'll answer those, so type them in. I do see one question that we have here. Okay, how to influence other group members coming from a different environment to have the same mindset, and how to maintain this state of mind despite the constraints and the difficulties. It's a great question. And the question really is one where we move from an external locus of control to internal locus of control, to driven internally. And what we're hoping to do is to work with our organization and to have the organization understand why it's important that we be internally driven, or this internal locus of control driven. Okay, so we want to make sure that, and if you have other members coming from another environment, we have to immerse them in what our thoughts are. We have to get them to challenge it. So for example, if somebody says, oh no, that'll never work, we have to ask, well, why is that? Why do you believe that? What do you base that assumption on? Could there be different ways that we could challenge that assumption? So I guess I've gotten involved a lot when particularly in today's world, and we know we have a lot of fake news, right? So we know in today's world, I'm always hearing things on the internet, or it may even be on the news cycle, where I go, I wonder if that's really true, and I'll go do the research to see if it really is, because I want to base my opinion on things that really are factual. The same should occur within an organization. We will always have constraints, we will always have difficulties, but the more people we can have develop an entrepreneurial mindset, the more successful that company will be. We can continue to show companies from top down why, if they adopt this type of mindset, they'll be more successful. And then from the bottom up, provide training to each individual. So for me, to answer that question, I train people coming in with mindset, and then maintain it requires management to change, to be cheerleaders, to be constraint or difficulty removers from that. So another question that we have here is how to establish trust and generate healthy conflict in a high context culture like ours, which is a very interesting one, because I think that we all have personal agendas. We all have agendas that may conflict with one another. And the best training I've received is to say, we should share what those agendas are, so we're open and honest with each other with what they really are, so we know where people are coming from and what their mindset is. And then we should try to recognize that we have these personal agendas, and we then try to say, okay, but how do we move forward in a collegial way, in a teamwork way, a collaborative way, to move forward the vision for the organization? So those of us that work for ABS, we have different backgrounds, we have different research that we're working on, but we're looking to try to figure out, how do we innovate, and how do we continue to move the organization forward? How do we contribute to the common vision? I hope that may have answered the question for you. We have another question. How do we promote the entrepreneurial mindset among all stakeholders of entrepreneurial ecosystems, not only for entrepreneurs, but for policymakers, investors, bankers, etc.? I think we have to get, and it's a great question, thank you for it, we have to have an understanding that entrepreneurship is not just new venture creation. Why the power of having an entrepreneurial mindset applies to policymakers, investors, and bankers. We can start to share, and I think our job in academia is to share the research that says what the impact is, the positive impact of the entrepreneurial mindset on the workforce. So I mentioned to you the Ice House program, where these materials are derived from. They've used these materials for government workers. They've used them for people that start their own company. They use them for universities. And they find that those government agencies, for example, that incorporate the entrepreneurial mindset into their daily activities are ones that succeed and are more likely to have better positive impacts. It's our job to get and convince the policymakers and the people that are in government, the people, bankers, investors, they're very risk adverse, right? To get them to see why they should invest in us. and why what we have is of benefit to them. A great next question: how do we develop our entrepreneurial mindset? I'm going to speak a little bit to that next week, but there are materials you can go look at now if you wish to. You can look at what is called the Ice House program. Okay, go look up on the internet the Ice House program from ELI, the Entrepreneurial Learning Initiative, and there are some free materials that have you start reflecting on your mindset and what can be, how you can start developing it. I will talk next week about components of the mindset, abilities, skills, and what you can do to reflect on those and how you can develop them. So some of it comes from look at the internet over the next week, Ice House program, and then show up next week for session number 3, and I'll talk about that. How to influence those with a fearful state of mind. I think we influence those with our positive reaction. I think that the more we can show that we are in charge, charge is a bad word, control, that we are in control of how we respond, the better off we are. Those that have a fearful mindset, by the way, have a very small center of, here's a big circle of our life. They feel they can only impact this much. Okay, so those of us that feel that we have an internal locus of control, an entrepreneurial mindset, out of all those things in the world that influence us, we feel we have a much larger opportunity to impact the direction of where we're going, as well as the direction of the environment that we're in. So I do a lot of work with those with a fearful state of mind, saying, well, why do you feel that way? Where does that come from? Is that a valid assumption? And 80% of the time, it's not a valid assumption a person has made. We worry about things that will never happen to us, and we have to change that mindset. Okay, recommended books, articles, materials to develop an entrepreneurial mindset. There are some really good ones. I did just post up one for you that we're doing something called the stay-at-home or takeaway knowledge, and I happen to have that book here. Here's a book called The Whole New Mind. This is a very easy read. This helps you develop a mindset that becomes one that really focuses on a bigger picture. And the Ice House program materials, which you can find some of those on the internet, I think those would help you to develop an entrepreneurial mindset. A lot of this is realizing what components are of a mindset. We'll talk about those next week, and then taking action to improve or to gain those skills. We have another question here. Before changing one's own mindset, one needs to understand, become conscious of his own beliefs and all the components that you mentioned. Now the question is, how do you get to the starting point without being biased? And it's a great question. We all have biases about who we are and what we do, what we're good at, what we're not good at. My experience as an entrepreneur allowed me to always challenge those biases that we have. What are we good at? What are we not good at? So I guess I'm a bit biased with this answer for me, but it comes from challenging the things that we think we're good at or not good at. It comes from experience with doing that. So when I started my company, I thought there were things that I really would enjoy doing that I found out I really didn't enjoy. I found out that there were skills I didn't have, yet there were other skills I didn't even know that I had that I became very good at. And that's maybe it's strategic visioning, for example. And it allowed me to go, well, wait a minute, let me challenge that. Am I really good at it? Am I really not good at that? And me to go see, well, let me see if I can become good at that. Maybe you say you're not very good at music, but you go try guitar lessons. Maybe you say that, I don't know that I could be really good at doing a website, but you go and you try to develop one. So I think that's really the answer that I would have for that. Here's a great question. Are there psychological tests which results in entrepreneurial mindset? Absolutely. And here's an offer to you. I'm a practitioner of what's called the Entrepreneurial Mindset Profile. The Entrepreneurial Mindset Profile. And if you email me, and maybe Geeta can give you my email address, we can post that up, Geeta. If you do that, I'll send you the assessment for free. So I'll send you the assessment that you can take, and then I can help you review the answers. It will show you skills that entrepreneurs have. It will show you your level of skills, your level of confidence. It'll show you also your personality. Next week, we're going to talk about those things in specific, but those of you listening now, if you want to take advantage of taking the Entrepreneurial Mindset Profile, it's online. It is in English, it is online. There may be a French version I could see, but you could take that just by letting me know that you wish to take that. So maybe we can work that through Gita, and then I'll be available to review the results with you. Perfect about the entrepreneurial mindset and skill. Okay.
I will be happy to share your email with the rest of the participants right after by the end of the day.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I think we have answered all the questions here. I see the last one, which I think this is one that we just addressed. If you feel that I haven't, then Yassine, let me know if there's something that maybe I missed here. Okay. If we have any other questions, I see we're running up against our time here, but of course, I think we're still available. If you have anybody else has a question or two, happy to answer it for you. Something to think about. Usually when people talk about entrepreneurship, they're talking about starting a company. I'm good at helping you with that, as we are at ABS, but this mindset as it applies to a large organization and success for you in any of the endeavors, I think is very important, and one that I like to help you work with and work on. So Gita, if we don't have any further questions, I think we're done. What do you say?
I believe that there is a participant who is interested in the question about biases, even though you addressed, maybe you can elaborate a little bit more about it.
Yeah, sure.
Possible?
Yeah, so I
assume,
oh yeah, my pleasure, that it comes to this, it comes for us to have an open mind to challenge what we think about ourselves. This is how I had always heard it addressed. You can tell people what you think you are like. You can tell people how you think they want you to be like, or you can tell people how you really are. So if you were to take the entrepreneurial mindset profile from me, I would say to you, when you answer questions, don't answer the questions how you'd like to be. Don't answer the questions how you'd like other people to see you as. Answer the questions how you really are. It requires for us to do some self-reflection. And it requires us to go, okay, am I really like that? Why do I have that belief? Where did I develop that assumption from? And if we're always challenging those levels, a self-reflection of our skills, our competencies, what we like, what we don't like, I think that allows us to either affirm, confirm, yes, that belief is correct, or no, wait a minute, I just discovered something new about myself. So that's, I think, another way of how I'd answer the question. So if we have any other questions here, anything else that you guys would like to put in the questions, certainly ask them. We are very happy that you've attended the session. Next week, as I've said to you guys, that we're going to talk next week about what drives an entrepreneurial mindset. We're going to get specifically into personality traits and into skills. And this will give you things to think about that will allow you to start going, wait a minute, how can I move forward in obtaining those skills? And how can I reflect about my personality? So I hope that you attend next week's session with me. Thank you very much for being with us, and have a great rest of your day.